Hello and welcome everyone, my name's Capcan and this is my leveling guide for Necromancer in hardcore solo account found, solo self found, basically without any additional items or any additional extra help that you can't get from anywhere else when you're playing first time with your Necromancer or in hardcore and you don't really want to die. So I've played with my Necromancer through the campaign without any additional items, without any additional goods and stuff like that. But I have played not as a first character. I didn't use anything from my stash, I didn't take any items, but what I did have and access to were dungeons. And I've did my dungeons on the similar levels to themselves. So I've went into Lightless Arbor at level 23, and then Soulfire Bastion level 45, and Temporal Sanctum was a bit more, I was a bit more leveled. I was level 60 or 61 whenever I went into Temporal Sanctum, and then I was done with everything, and I've completed my campaign. I was able to do my monoliths level 58 or something whenever they are starting. I was level 50 and I was able to clear them. With the same character, I'm still clearing level 85 monoliths while being level 75, so 10 levels before, 7 levels below. And in general, I want to share my knowledge about how I was leveling my Necromancer, which were breakpoints of health of my minions, which were breakpoints for my own health and my own survivability, where did I find all the sustain that you need in order to live through some mechanics of bosses, all the points that you need from on different levels when the life starts to be harder, especially whenever you're going through the dungeons and skipping campaign, because I didn't want to do campaign at full on my second character, and I really wanted to play through the dungeons as they were meant for the levels that they are actually good for in terms of experience per hour. I was farming them for XP, farming them for items. There are a ton of items that you can get from those dungeons, and it really speeds your process up, and you don't really need any gear prior to that. Yeah, so this is going to be my guide on that, and it may be a bit long, but I hope that you stay through. I will probably have some gameplay on the background, at least from time to time, in order to everything not feel as stale, but we'll see how that will go. So yeah, let's go. Let's probably start from our talent tree, and this way I'm gonna be able to recall the most things way easier. So whenever you're starting playing as a Necromancer, your main problem at first is that you don't really have any ways to heal other than your health potion, and that your minions can die in the most awful times, and you don't really have enough mana to resummon them all, and then you are in this problem where you don't deal any damage to your enemies, they kill your minions way faster than you can, then you can resummon them or something like that, and you don't really have any way to heal yourself. So this situation may occur whenever you're entering your first dungeon. In my opinion and in my experience, whenever you're playing through first 20 levels of campaign, and even so basically up to your first dungeon, you don't really feel any stress at all. You can just play with any summoning skills. The first skill that I was playing with I was starting with Rip Blood and Marrow Shards. I was of course using my skeletons. And then volatile zombie. Whenever you get volatile zombies, they are pretty good, but in general you're just playing with anything that will be that you feel like is okay, and the campaign is very easy on those first 20 levels. But whenever you're getting closer to the dungeon, this is the part whenever you feel like you and in the dungeon itself, you do have way more enemies around you. You do have this boss that can really hurt you and can really hurt your minions. And you do have still absence of many mechanics that will be good for you to sustainably go through all that experience. And I'm gonna try to help with that. So basically, whenever you're starting, you're just going for any skills that you want. Respecking is very fast. You don't really I would recommend you just test every single ability out. And yeah, mostly that. In terms of our passives, on first levels, you definitely lack in terms of damage. You don't have many increases to damage. So Blood Aura that increases damage of your minions is quite powerful. It increases your damage. You're still doing damage with your own skills. So this will speed you up, and this will be pretty good in terms of starting. Forbidden Knowledge with additional intelligence and necrotic resistance is still not as needed, at least in my opinion, as I was playing through. Bone Aura is pretty good, especially if you feel that your minions are dying more than they need to. Then slapping some additional armor will definitely help, but we will do the switch from Blood Aura for our 5 points, for our first 5 points threshold. We will do the switch from Blood Aura to Bone Aura whenever we're getting closer to the dungeon itself. Then, of course, Dark Rituals, you definitely want to have at least 1 point in here. You want to have your Ethereal Revenant that can pop up and be a bit of a help for you. The Mania of Mortality, you definitely want at least some points into here, maybe 1 or 2. And again, it will help you both whenever you're just leveling and especially in the dungeon, or whenever you're farming all the minions in the pre-boss rooms, in pre-boss locations. It will give you a bunch of survivability that you really need there, and it will save you additionally, so this will be good as well. Stolen Vitality is definitely the thing that you want to prioritize, and you probably want to prioritize it more than Bone Aura, because Vitality will give you more survivability than some additional armor on the starting parts of the game, and increased minion health will give you more. Increased minion health will give your minions more survivability than some additional flat armor, because you don't have enough minion health on your gear yet. So whenever you're gonna be entering Lightless Arbor, you don't really have enough minion health in order for your minions to stay healthy, and this Stolen Vitality will be very, very powerful, and it will be very helpful, so you want to prioritize this as much as possible. So for the first 5 points, whenever you're coming to Lightless Arbor, if I say this dungeon's name correctly, you want to spec out of your Blood Aura to your Bone Aura, but only for those 5 points that you need to get to your like second row of talents. And then here you just put 1 point or most likely 1 point into Dark Rituals, not as much, and then most of your points going into Stolen Vitality, 1 or 2 points into Mania of Mortality, because you will not have as much of this effect whenever you're fighting boss. This ward would not really help you on boss, because boss will hit way harder than all the tiny ward that you can gain from it. You wouldn't have enough talent points to have high amounts of ward from it, and there is just not enough trash on the Lightless Arbor boss in order for you to gain enough ward from it. Then one point into Ethereal Revenant, and I'm not sure where it stops. If you need some additional resistances, you can definitely go into Unnatural Preservation, but at your first boss encounter and at your first dungeon encounter, I still would recommend you going as hard as possible into Stolen Vitality and to put your resistances on your gear. It's way easier for you to find any resistance on gear than it will be high rolls of minion health. And here is Vitality that gives us some resistance and some health as well. So that's going to be it when it comes to your talents, most likely. And Soul Aegis will be pretty good for 1 point. It's more than fine. It's more than enough. and you will probably want to take it, but still most of your points will need to be in Stolen Vitality, some of them in Bone Aura, and then minimum amounts of them in but you need for Soul Ages you need 4 points in Dark Rituals, which means that you will probably invest into them. Minion attack speed is still pretty valuable and good, so it's not bad. But yet again, your minion health on early levels is very is the thing that you will need a lot. Then in our Necromancer talent tree, you wouldn't have a lot of talent points here, but just in general, I would prioritize either minion health and minion armor increases or this Rising Army. I wouldn't take Elixir of Hunger, you don't have enough. In dungeons, especially, you will struggle on bosses most of the time, at least in your first dungeon, and you don't have that much potion generation in there. That's why this hunger and flat health from here would not really help you that much. So mostly Rising Army and Grave Thorns. After that, blood armor does not really help much, but you still may want to invest like a couple of points here. Mortal Tether, at least if you're investing 1 point here, then you can get Mortal Tether a bit later and give even more increases to your minion health. But that's mostly it when it comes to your first dungeon, because your first dungeon will be in a quite close, you wouldn't have many more talents than like 5 or 6 or 7 in here, depending on the level that you're going into your first dungeon. So that's when it comes to our talents. When it comes to your skills, you will have at least 2 open, at least you should have at least 2 open skills. And here I would proceed on your, how I did everything. I went for Golem first. Golem was my main minion that would not die. He was the most powerful in terms of damage, AoE clear, and defenses. And I went pretty hard on Amalgam of Sentinels. There is like 2 different pathways that you can take here. You can either go for Amalgam of Sentinels, Tower of Bones, and Fragments of the Fallen, which will make your Golem way more, it will make it bigger, make it more damage. Pretty high amount of damage you can get from Fragments of the Fallen, and Amalgam of Sentinels gives him both flat health and armor and more multipliers. So it's not increases, which means that these multipliers will multiply all your increases. So this, if you want your Golem not to die ever, you can invest here more, and this will provide you with healthy, more powerful Golem. You can go for additional Amalgam of Primalists, and it will give more defenses to your smaller minions, but it will still not help them not die. They will probably die due to everything. They would not have leech, they would not have big amounts of health. It will just strain your mana a little bit less when it comes to resummoning your other minions, with your skeletons, for example. And there's then second way how you can approach things. You can go for Amalgam of Sentinels, Unnatural Speed, and then take Hunger. Hunger is healing mechanism for you whenever your Golem hits enemies. This one is pretty powerful, and it's still, even on level 75, one of my main sustain ways, especially if you do have, and we do have, pretty good amount of talents for attack speed for our minions, which means that our Golem will attack faster, and this one will proc faster too. So this one, if you feel like your Golem is more than tanky enough and he will not die as fast or not die at all, then definitely do not go for more points in Amalgam of Sentinels. Just take 1 point here, and then use more points into Hunger for your health regen, for your safety. You can take Blood Golem. It is like a bit better than Bone Golem because it has additional skill, but it is still not a very powerful increase, but still, if you do have some open points up to that point, then Blood Golem is definitely an upgrade on Bone Golem. Afterwards, I would still go for Fragments of the Fallen on lower levels, and proceeding to the end game, this talent is very good. You don't really need 2 golems, and you need to invest highly into attack speed and movement speed of your golem, which is never really a problem. And then yeah, your golems can die more easy. But so I would not. I've played with this setup, and it didn't really work. Which that's why I've went into Fragments of the Fallen, first Blood Golem, and after that on later stages of the game I've respec into Pyre Golem. So yeah, Golem is your first thing to take. Then if you want to, you will probably go for Wraiths. Wraiths are very, very good. Your skeletons are most likely destined to die anyways. They don't deal too much damage, and they cost way more mana, and they don't give you any additional defenses for yourself. You can spec into skeletons and go for early rogues and yeah, probably first into healthier skeletons, removing archers, and then going for rogues. So basically Necrotic Conviction, Hollow Walkers, Shambling Steel, and then Dread Phalanx, and then go for rogues. Rogues deal way more damage. They help you with clearing way better because they teleport to enemies, they throw shurikens, then their Acid Flask is pretty good as well. So these are the first that I would target with skeletons in general. So you first go down here and then for rogues, and then if you want more clear, then you can have more cooldown recovery speed for their Acid Flask. Or you just go for more additional skeletons and stuff like that. So this part of the tree I would take as way further down the line, but you can still take this Unbound Necromancy for mana efficiency of your summoning skeletons. If you are struggling with mana, you can definitely put many points in here and your skeletons will cost almost nothing, but that comes somewhat of an antithesis to how we are going with our minions. We are investing hard into our minion survivability, so we don't really want our minions to die quite often, and we do have talents like this that make us summon less skeletons. So going into mana efficiency for skeletons while not taking damage and increases, if they're not gonna die anyways, you don't really want this as much. So that's why I wasn't really taking this part of the tree. It was enough for me to go into rogues and to go into more damage input from skeletons and then defenses on my gear for them. But yeah, that's what I was doing with them. But yet again, Wraiths are more preferable before your first dungeon. If you are going through the dungeon run, then definitely go for Golem and Wraiths. If I'm correct, and if I recall correctly, you do have your Wraiths way before the dungeon. You have the ability to go into the dungeon whenever you're getting your Necromancer talent tree, which means that you can spec into them. And if you can spec into them, that's good because you want 2 points into Reapers. It's not for the damage itself, it's for the access to Wraithbringer and then to One Foot in the Grave. Wraithbringer will just make them cheaper, make your summoning speed faster, and One Foot in the Grave will gain you ward whenever you're summoning them. You're not really interested that much in their health decay. There will be plenty of that, but you want to specialize in this as fast as possible. For me, it worked pretty well. It was my way to leech life, to have additional health, to have sustain with my own hands, without Golem assisting and healing me after I was getting hit. It was ward gain, and especially later down the even campaign route, whenever you will have some additional ward retention, some additional intelligence that gives ward retention, these ward gains will be essential. But just in general, they are very powerful, and you want to go in here and use your summon Wraith as just in general skill that gives you sustain and it gives you additional damage. They will die fast. You will anyway, you will need to resummon them constantly. That's what I was doing, and these are skills that I was specializing in first. So Golems and Wraiths are for sure instrumental for your success. And with talents, we've already talked about which types of talents you want to take early on, especially for now. We're talking about mostly about the period before you're trying to access the first dungeon. And if you want to farm that dungeon for experience on level 22, 23, 24, starting, and then confront the boss after 2, 3, 4 levels that you will get by farming 2 locations before the boss inside the dungeon. So if you're planning on this round, that is, in my opinion, the most fun way to level up your character. You're farming tons of mobs, you're getting tons of good items they're dropping way better loot in dungeons and way more loot than whenever you're going through the campaign. So if I was re-leveling my Necromancer, I would go through the dungeon. If you're going through the campaign, all my advices are still solid and valid. You just wouldn't have this much pressure in compared to dungeon run. So dungeon run is just a bit harder to execute because you have these thresholds, especially the 22, 24 level one. That is, you are just way more strict on gear, and that's why you need to invest in different things in your talents. Now, when it comes to our equipment, for your first dungeon, you want to cap your elemental resistance, in general, all resistances as much as possible. You want to have minion health on different parts of your items, but you probably would not be able to have as much of that. About minion damage, I would not stress as much because we do have a bit of minion damage anyways with our talents. Our minions will do enough of damage. I would recommend you at least try to farm and find somewhat small, any type of flat minion melee and spell damage on your weapon, at least melee damage, but they always come with the second modifier. There's either bone or spell damage, but for you bow is not really, we're not interested in bow damage. That's why melee and spell damage one is better. But yeah, flat damage on your weapon, try to find it. The weapon type may be anything, literally everything. You're just interested in that one modifier, and otherwise on all your slots, try to prioritizing vitality, intelligence, resistances, health. Maximum health may help you if you are it may help you to live through everything, but still the maximum health is not as much of an importance, and you can't really have that much of maximum life on those levels. The tiers wouldn't be high enough. But resistances and minion health will help you a lot. Don't try to sway yourself into taking more minion damage. Only if minion damage is like twice or something close to twice the minion health that you do have on different items for one slot, then you can of course take that minion damage. In general, your minion damage on items is a lower in the number, so minion health numbers can grow way higher, twice or even like thrice times the minion damage can get to. And after your first dungeon, we will start prioritizing damage more, because we will have an ability to have both minion health on items and sometimes some damage. We will start to change our passive talents from minion life like this, so we will go from the increased minion health in our base tree and here to more of damage talents, because our gear will catch up even after the first run of your dungeon. Even if you didn't try to kill the boss and you were just farming minions and then you've teleported out and you want to refarm it again for experience and items, whatever, you will have enough items with minion life probably in order for you to spec out of some of these talents that give increased minion health and go into additional talents for minion damage, for armor shred of your minions. And yeah, in general, this part, this talent that gives flat damage, even though it's physical, most of your minions will be physical at that point. You can make your skeleton mages into death knights as well, which that will mean that they will benefit from melee damage too. So yeah, after you finishing your first dungeon, for you it will be more of a change from you trying to prioritize resistances on your gear and trying to prioritize minion survivability on your talent tree, more into you're trying to prioritize health, vitality, and percentage health on your gear. And you will most likely have a bunch of gear that has health, vitality, and some minion health on them combined. This way you will have an ability to switch into more minion damage on your talent tree, and maybe you will cover up some resistances and gain some additional word retention with talents like Unnatural Preservation. This will help you to alleviate some stress from your items in terms of resistances as well, and you will be able to get some additional damage there, some additional health, some additional vitality that will be crucial for you not to get any one-shots in the future. But yeah, just in general, after the first dungeon, closer to the level 35 or level 40, whenever you're gonna be getting all that gear, after the first dungeon, your somewhat particular cruise through the campaign for a little bit of additional experience, whenever you're leveling up to the second dungeon, you will... right before the second dungeon, you will definitely, for sure, spec out of talents like Stolen Vitality. At least in my case, it worked. There may be other strategies that I'm not aware of, and you need to still stay with Stolen Vitality. With me, it worked. I've spec'd out of here. I've got more minion attack speed. I've got more word generation on enemy deaths. I've got some additional poison and necrotic resistance and ward retention from the talent point here from Unnatural Preservation. Everything else I still didn't really touch. Yeah, not Forbidden Knowledge, not Blood Aura, no Respects, no Putrid Demise. So here it was just like from this talent, more to this talent, and to a little bit of Mania of Mortality. And then with our Necromancer talent tree, for sure you want to go hard on your ward retention and gaining ward whenever your minions die. You still don't want to spec into Life Drinker and into Soul Drinker. For me it was crucial because on lower, even like on level 40, 45, you still don't have enough mana and don't have enough mana regeneration in order to have this richness and to be able to consume your minions whenever you're using your potion, because most likely what will happen is that you're not really, whenever you receive some damage, some critical damage, and you need to use your potion to heal yourself, you probably would not really target your right minion in that moment, and this may sacrifice your golem, and you would not have enough mana in boss fight in order to resummon your golem just like this. So in my opinion and in my experience, Life Drinker and Soul Drinker, they were Soul Drinker needed a lot of talents in order to be useful, and Life Drinker was causing more stress and harm than it was causing good. That's why I didn't take these talents, but Reclamation of Souls was pretty good. And in general, I've spec'd out of Blood Armor, I spec'd out of Moral Tether a bit more. Grave Thorns you still can think about having just because of some additional like reflect, some increases to minion armor, but yeah, it's not as necessary. It would not be as necessary, at least. And then you can invest way more into either Unearth Arms at first, if you do have Death Knights, and if you do have like mostly melee damage with Golem being melee, all your skeletons, rogues and warriors being melee, and if you're playing with Death Knights with Skeleton Mages converted to Death Knights, then I would spec more into this. But yes, for now, we've completed first dungeon, we're something close to level 35, and we're heading to leveling up until our second dungeon. Which skills are we taking? What are we upgrading, and stuff like that. So for sure, skeletal mages will be, in my opinion, right thing to specialize in, I would go into Leech Life for 2 points for additional health and health leech, but mostly not for that. Mostly for Death Knights. Death Knights that convert your skeletal mages into melee guys that can use. They use melee attacks, and they can use Hungering Souls, which will be very powerful and good addition for you on clearing stuff. And then you're going for some third point into Leech Life with getting additional health for your Death Knights, and then you're taking Undead Mortar, which will deal additional damage and will be pretty good. Then I've got Shadow Wardens, which gave some additional ward per second generation for Death Knights, for them to be more of a tanky guys and not to die as fast as skeleton mages would be, because you probably wouldn't take this point for them. And then I've took Order of Death for additional number of my Death Knights, and this was like the main part of where I was speccing with my Skele Mages, and Death Knights worked pretty well. I've got some Splintered Dominion points for melee area of effect for them to be more useful in that terms. And after that, probably my second dungeon was already complete. But this is my way of doing things. I was going for Skeletal Mages as my third option in this expanding your minion army. And that's why in your talent points I was advocating and talking about Unearthed Arms, because it increases physical damage for your minions, and you still do have either Blood Golem or Bone Golem. Both are physical. And all your minions are using this melee physical +1 as a very powerful tool for them to increase the damage, because you don't really have many sources of flat damage for your summons, and you don't really have summoning flat damage, spell flat damage for minions. Somewhere around here you can get it way past your basically just like way past the second dungeon, if I recall correctly, all the levels that you're getting, all the passives and stuff like that. I was speccing into Tyrant too. Tyrant was very crucial for me, and I had 5 or 6 talent points, something close to that. But in general, Tyrant is a powerful tool for you to have more health. If you're invested in flat health in your gear, and in general you do have good amounts of health on your gear, this talent it doesn't take a lot of your minion health, because you do have already, you need to have like hundreds of increased minion health, but it gives you additional health, which is very good. It was giving me something close to 20, maybe like 15-20 flat health per point, and it was quite handy with resistances being close to cap. You don't really need your resistances up to second dungeon. You don't really need all your resistances to be capped. You need only fire and necrotic one to be capped, and others in my case were on like 50%, and it was more than fine. But with additional health it definitely helps, and it was instrumental. And while I was leveling through the Soulfire Bastion, I can remember it as it was right now, I was putting points into Cling to Life, because my minions were dying to fire, and to fire this flamethrower guys, and with necrotic eyes that are channeling. So both types of channeling damages were killing my minions. And the last boss, you do have all those patches on the ground that does either fire or necrotic damage. And it was quite powerful, and minions were dying, not Golem, but most other minions, especially on the last boss or on some very hard parts of the trash before the boss. But this Cling to Life minion resistances is a very powerful thing for you to have some additional less damage taken for your minions, especially for Soulfire Bastion. And it gives you vitality too. So it gives you the health, and it gives you some additional resistances, which is more than cool. And then Tyrant Legion. whenever you have points to get into here. I was not taking any of points further up, so I was not taking this attack speed, I was not taking this minion fire or necrotic damage, because most of my minion damage at that point was still physical, and Unearthed Arms was way better for this. And then empty the graves, depending on your situation, but it probably would not be, it depends on how many minions do we have, but it may improve your survivability if you feel like you're vulnerable to burst damage incomes and you can't really survive that stuff. Now we've talked about the skeletal mages first, and the death knights. Then where do we upgrade our bone golem and our wraiths? So bone golem, after the I would use all my points into hunger for sure. So yeah, basically all 5 of them. This is very, very instrumental, and up to Soulfire Bastion, and whenever you're there, I would take Amalgam of Primalists. Because your other smaller minions definitely need that flat armor for them to survive. And your golem will probably be quite close to unkillable anyway, so you don't really need up to Soulfire Bastion, you don't really need points in your Amalgam of Sentinels as much. And you're just going for Amalgam of Primalists, and focus from survivability of the golem changes to the focus of survivability of your minions. I even spec'd out of Fragments of the Fallen and Tower of Bones for me to have enough points to get additional survivability to my smaller minions, because only increases to health was not really working that much. So yeah, that's why. But you're still not going into Fire Golem. Fire Golem switch will probably happen closer to Monoliths, or even after the Temporal Sanctum run, which means that like level 60, something close to that, after you finish campaign, then Fire Golem makes more sense, and speccing into fire damage and stuff. But before that, you do have things that you want to put your points into. You still want to have Fragments of the Fallen. You still want to have a lot of points into Hunger and Amalgam of Primalists. With Wraiths, it's quite simple. You're just going for more maximum Wraiths, more flat necrotic damage to Wraiths attacks, and then some additional necrotic health leech and necrotic damage increases, so that your leeches will, so that your Wraiths will live more with being able to leech life, and them being, more Wraiths being able to be summoned. And then fourth thing that I was taking was Summon Skeleton. The Transplant, I was leveling up the last one, because it's not as essential, especially not on bosses. With Skeletons, as I've said before, going for Dread Phalanx first and Shambling Steel, then Rogues, Acid Flask, and either melee area of effect or additional number of skeletons. With Dread Phalanx, you want to have the amount of small skeletons being rounded up. So basically, if you do have like maximum 6 skeletons maximum, that means that it will be 3 phalanx. If you have 7, it will be 4. If you have 8, it still will be 4, which means that you want to have to be at 5 or 7. That will then on the number that will be rounded up with this talent, because this way it is, you don't really need to put more talent points into some other stuff, either on your baseline talent tree or on your Summon Skeleton talent tree. That's with your skeletons. And then with our passives, I think so we've probably made it past Soulfire Bastion, and now, to be honest, everything is quite easy for you. You do have healing from your golem, you do have ward retention, quite high of ward retention and ward granted on minion deaths. You're using your wraiths and generate even more ward for yourself. You're defended. Everything that you need to think about in terms of your talent points now is more damage, more flat damage, depending on the type of your minion. If you started changing into fire and necrotic and skele mages, then you want to respec out of unearthed arms and go into moonlight pyre, go into rite of undeath. If you are still on death knights and you are using blood golem or bone golem, or even fire golem, unearthed arms still works on fire golem as well. It gives him melee physical damage, flat one. That will be quite useful. You may want to take Life Drinker if you are comfortable with the amounts of mana that you have and your mana regeneration, and you're not really starved at mana, and it's not the end of the world for you to lost one of your bigger minions in time of needs. So yeah, you can take your Life Drinker, maybe like 1-2 points into Soul Drinker for you to have this big panic button. If you need that one. It's still way early for you to go for crit. Critical, if you want to go into crits for your skeletons or in general your minions, I would recommend for you to do it closer to level 70, 75 and past that. I was able to do that for now, and I'm not even sure as much of a gain it is. It should be, but I was able to do that on my level 75 character, and I'm on monolith level 85. Before that, I would just ignore crit for minions and just go for the type of damage that your minions do, their survivability on your items. So all you want to have as much minion health on your items as possible. So hundreds of percentages wherever you can. You're just keeping this trend. And whenever you're coming to the third dungeon, to the Temporal Sanctum, you may want to introduce an idea of minion damage on your items. You may want to craft some minion damage on your items because you will probably need that. You definitely want to have capped resistances for yourself, for sure. With the weapon, it's still quite easy. Minion spell damage, minion melee damage, one modifier on the weapon. That's all that you need. And then with your talents, you're just, if you do have enough resistances, you can respec out of Unnatural Preservation and go into Mania of Mortality more for you to have more survivability while on Trash, because gradually Trash will become more dangerous than the bosses, because your minions will stop dying as much on bosses, and on bosses all the attacks are when they're coming and you can dodge them. With clearing stuff, it's way more unexpected, and that's why you may want to put more talents into things that help you clear rather than boss. But yeah, in general, I would transfer to talent state that I do have here up on whenever you're in Temporal Sanctum or you're finished Temporal Sanctum and you're level 55, 60, you finished campaign, whichever that is. I would be in this place with my general Acolyte points for sure, with Mania of Mortality, not much points in Unnatural Preservation, although you can still have them in here and just have a bit less in Mania of Mortality. This will help you with resistances. And you don't have that much intelligence at first, which means that your ward retention is not as good. And that's why you may want more ward retention from your talents rather than from your items. And then gradually, change from what I was doing is after the campaign finishing, I respect my skeletons. I respect my skeleton mages from Death Knights into mages. I've went for a bit more cast speed and frenzy, and this crit chance wasn't necessary. I was just taking more skele damage. I went into more spell damage, flat one. Of course, I've stood with my mortars, but this was skeletal mages provide way bigger AoE coverage in monoliths. That's why I've changed into that. Then with Wraiths, I didn't do anything. They're perfect. With Bone Golem, after your finishing campaign and you're getting all these gear upgrades from monoliths, You don't really need Amalgam of Primalists that much because you do have a lot of minion life from your gear. So I've spec'd out of here. I spec'd out of Amalgam of Sentinels because your Golem is unkillable. It doesn't need any points in there. I've still managed to have Hunger at 5 points, and then all the other, like these points from here and from here that was free, I was starting to spec into Pyre Golem. First, just spec into him and then see if you want more AoE or you want more something else. Either melee damage or AoE or survivability to your smaller minions. With regular skeletons, I've respec'd completely out of rogue cooldown from Acid Flask because they've stopped being... After you have skeletal mages, you don't really need as much cooldown recovery on Acid Flask because you don't really need that AoE clear. You can go into more skeletons. You can go into, particularly into their crit, but first I would probably advise you to take Narrow Tap to have additional health leech and some resistances for them. Maybe more talent points into Necrotic Conviction for your warriors to be healthy and for you to need only from time to time respawn your rogues that are not benefiting from like this maximum health more increase. And then with Transplant, for sure, I would go for Bone Armor first. For the increases of Bone Armor, for increases to duration of your Bone Armor after you're using Transplant, and for Transplant costing less health, having a smaller cooldown and higher cast speed, increases to Bone Armor effect, and then Drink Deep for your health to regenerate after every single blink. And then last ones will be Sticky Blood for some additional slow of enemies and Marrow Blades for additional damage. That's mostly it. If you're interested in going for this character and playing like this and going through the endgame upgrades that I do have on this character, then I do have a video with that. You can check it out on my channel. I will have both video and my loot filter for early monoliths, early to mid monoliths in the description to this video. Maybe it even pop up, but yeah, thanks for watching, hope you're having a good time, bye.